Okay, welcome all. Welcome to this lecture of Object-Oriented Programming 1, and let's continue with the introduction to Java. Okay, so let me now start the presentation. First, let me show the disclaimer. Okay, let's start. So what did we do is we had specifically looked at some parts like what is Java, right? Then we saw Java as a programming language. Then we saw Java as an application and deployment environment. Then we saw that how Java works. We saw that a Java program is given to compiler, which gets converted into a class file, which is that again given to an interpreter. Then it will run on your. So we have two important files over here that we have to take care of. One is the .java file, that is the source code. Okay, what is that? That is the source code, and the second is the .class file, which is nothing but the bytecode. Okay, so this bytecode is very much beneficial for Java because it runs in an interpreter which is nothing but the JVM. Okay, Java Virtual Machine, where this .class file will run. So that JVM provides some part in the memory in your machine, and on that your Java program runs. So that's why Java is secure. Okay, so we saw this part. Then we saw this example. Okay, now we saw what is system.out.println. What does it mean when you say we want to print something out onto the screen? So you use system class. In that system class, you have one out object which is of type print string, and that print string class has got a method println that we are invoking. Okay, and this out is a static variable. So since it's a static variable, we are able to access it like this. Okay, this is what we had seen, right? So this is uh, system.out.println that we saw, right? Test greeting, I know most of you are not able to understand. So what we will do is I'll explain you very simple greeting class, right? Very simple class. So here, instead of going with this part, let me show you what will happen when you compile and run. So we have already seen that this is Java programs are compiled once, run anytime, anywhere, right? So this is a Java file which gets compiled using Java compiler. Command is Java C. Okay, and once it gets compiled, uh, it generates test greeting.class file. So a Java file when compiled generates class file. Okay. Now what do? You use Java command to load that class file into JVM, and that JVM can belong to a Linux or Unix machine, it can belong to DOS or Windows machine, it can belong to Java OS or Solaris machine or any other machine, right? So this JVM makes your Java program platform independent. Okay, that's the best part. So we saw all these things, right? Okay, we saw there can be various types of command line errors. Runtime errors can also be there. We'll not see this right now. Let's see. We also saw right last time what is Java Virtual Machine, right? And what does it provide, right? Now, see, there is something called as code security. Why Java is called secure? There are some buzzwords that you need to know about Java, okay, before we start learning the actual language. So that's why I'm taking this particular slide where you come to know the properties behind or the importance of Java in various ways. So this is code security. Java is a secure language. Why is it secure? Check this out. Because if you run if you compile a Java file using JavaC command, then you get a Java class, a class file. Right now, this class file does not run like an standalone exe file. You might be knowing that a C program. Uh, Suppose this is a program .c, right? This C program can be converted into an obj file, right? Object file, and this object file then can be converted into, or we can have a program.exe file. So we can say that C program can directly get converted into an exe file once we build the program. Okay. So once we have exe file, this is standalone exe file which we can run anywhere on any DOS or Windows machine, right? But that is not the case with the Java file. Java file, here the source code is compiled using JavaC command, and you get a class file, right? And now that class file can be run on anywhere on network or on machine, okay? And that runs in a runtime environment only, and that runtime environment is called as Java runtime environment, JRE. Okay, where what happens is a class loader will load the class. Okay, so this is a class file, right? So test greeting class is there, for which the class loader will load the class. Then there is a bytecode verifier which will verify the bytecode that is present in this .class file. Then it is given to interpreter, which will actually run on the available hardware. What will it run? It will run your class file. So in this way your program runs, and you see why it is secure, because the program runs in the Java runtime environment only, in you can say inside the JVM only. What is JVM? Java Virtual Machine, which runs the Java programs, okay, which provides you with this interpreter and all those things. Okay, so make sure that you understand why Java is secure. Okay, because .class file that is generated from a source code of Java file, that cannot run standalone. You cannot double click and run it. You cannot directly run it. You can run it only in the Java runtime environment. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So, what is Java runtime environment?
Okay, so when you install, last time we had talked that when you install Java, okay, it will basically install two things. One is uh, when you download Java, okay, Java installation, you get two things with it. One is JDK, one is JRE. Okay, JDK is Java Development Kit, which provides you with this Java C and Java commands, okay, to compile and run the program. So as a developer, you need JDK, okay, and JRE is a sub part of that whole package. Okay, JRE is coming with JDK, but JRE can also be installed standalone. Okay, so it's like if you install JDK, JRE will be by default installed. But if you install JRE, then JDK will not be installed. Okay, JRE is nothing but a runtime environment that helps you run Java programs. So once you install JRE, you can run any Java application on your machine. So in order to run your Java application, you need to have installed Java runtime environment. Okay, understand? So if you check it out on the net, let me show you. If you check on, say, install Java, here I go to net and I say install Java, or simply say download Java. That's what I say. Okay, so here you can see Java Oracle is there. Download Java for Linux, it is saying. Okay, let me go to Java Oracle, and here it says Java plus new download, Java download. I click on this, So check this out. It has checked that this is my machine is 64-bit Java Windows machine, so it has recommended me the 64-bit Java for Windows part. Okay, that's it. See that? Okay. So now once you download this part, okay, I say agree and start free download. Okay, so it will give me, see, version 8 update 271. That's what it is giving me. So right now you check this out. Here it is downloading JRE. What is it downloading? Check this out. It is giving me JRE, right? But this is useless for me if I want to do development. So I need JDK. What do I need? I need JDK, right? So what I will search for is download JDK. That's what I will search. So here you can see Java SE downloads. It takes us to the Oracle parts, and here it is Java SE development kit 13, 11 is available, right? Check this out. Here it has taken us to Java SE downloads part where you can download the JDK part. So if I click on this, okay, let me just stop this, pause it. I don't want, or let me cancel it. Okay. Now here, check this out. It is giving me various packages for downloading, and here I have this JDK 15.0.1 Windows x64 build exe file. You see that? I need to install this part. Once I download this, it will come along with JRE also. Okay. So what is JDK and JRE? JDK is Java Development Kit, Java SE Development Kit, okay, which allows you to do Java development, and which allows you to do build applications, Java applications, okay. And what is JRE? JRE is just a runtime environment which will allow you to run the applications, which will not allow you to develop applications. Okay, so you need JDK in order to run. So you can use 15 or 11 or whatever the latest is. I don't mind. 8 was a stable one. I had good experience with 8 and other versions, so you can download them also. Okay, you can check download JDK version 8. Okay, so here it will take you to JDK development kit. So here I just have to download this part. Since mine is Windows 64-bit, I will download this part, last part of 166.79 MB, right? So once I download this exe, okay, it allows me, it tells me to review and accept your OT and agreement, and then I download it. Okay, so once I start downloading it, it will take me to Oracle login, which is a single sign-on login. Once I sign in, if you have not got username password for this, what you should do is you should sign up for this. So see, once I just signed in, it has started downloading. You can see over here, what is it downloading? It is downloading JDK 8U271. Okay, JDK 8 update 271. Okay, see that? So we need this part, JDK, to be installed, which will by default install JRE along with it. Okay, and why is it needed? Why do you need JDK? Yes, why do you need JDK? In order to compile and run the Java applications, do these two things both. Okay, and why do you need JVM? You need JVM in order to run. So if we check this slide, you will come to know properly that this part is possible with the help of JDK and JRE both. Okay, here we need JDK, plus JRE. And for running your applications, you need only JRE. Understand? For running, so this JRE provides you with Java Virtual Machine, which allows you to load your class files and run. Understand? Is this doubt clear? Yes? You can switch on your mic and tell me.
Hello, sir.
Okay. So these two things make sure that you properly understand what is JDK and what is JRE. JDK is simply for development. It allows you to use various APIs provided by Java, okay? And JRE is just a runtime environment which allows you to run the Java applications, okay? Now there is something called as just-in-time code generator. So see, what happens is when Java was developed, it was quite slow. Why? Because interpreters are quite slow. See, there are two types of languages. One is the compiled language, okay, and another is the interpreted language. Okay. So compiled language is what happens is a whole code is given to compiler. Okay, whole code is given to compiler, and that whole code is generated at once, and a file is generated which can be run. Okay. So that's what happens in compiler. Whereas in interpreter, what happens is line by line the source code is read by the interpreter. Okay. By the interpreter, line by line the source code is read and then it is run. Okay. So compiled programs are basically much faster to execute, whereas interpreted programs are much slower to execute. But here we can see that Java is a combination of both. It does compilation part over here and it does interpreting part over here. For generating the class file from the Java file, it does compilation using JavaC, and for running it uses what? Uses the interpreter. Okay. So how does that interpreter get loaded? When we use this Java command. Okay. So this, what happened is afterwards when Java was introduced, it came to notice that it was slower than C and C++ programs. So what the Java designers did is, creators did is, they introduced this just-in-time code generator or just-in-time compiler, it is said, okay, which will make faster execution of the program. Okay, so the class file is loaded by the class loader, then bytecode is verified, and then part is given to just-in-time code generator. Okay, and just-in-time compiler also it is said, and some part is interpreted. So in this way, what happens is your execution of Java command becomes faster on the whatever hardware is available. Okay. Now see, this thing is basically this just-in-time compiler. After once this just-in-time compiler, JIT compiler was added, the Java programs started running quite good as compared to C or C++ programs. Okay, so that's that's a good part that Java introduces JIT compiler. Okay, and what happens is, see, the portion of a verified bytecode is compiled to native machine code and executed directly on the hardware platform. What happens over here is we know that this Java file is converted into a class file, which is nothing but a bytecode. Okay, so that bytecode that is verified, right? Some portion of it is directly compiled to native machine code. Means native machine code means it is runnable on this hardware as per that hardware. So see, what is the advantage of C and C++? Right? The advantage of C and C++ is that if there is a program of C right? When you give it to compiler, okay, you give it to compiler, compiler will generate a file, a .obj file, okay, which runs according to the hardware of the machine on which it has executed. Understand? Whereas Java does what? Java compiles the Java source code, Java C compiles it and gives you a class file, which is not a full object file. It's a part of partly object file and partly Java file in that way. So that's why a new name was introduced to it. It is called as bytecode. So what happens is that bytecode has to be given to this interpreter, right? And interpreter is quite slower than compiler. We know that because it executes line by line. Okay. So what happens is the Java developers introduced this JIT compiler, which will compile some part of your bytecode to native machine code. Native machine code means on whichever machine it is running, on whichever machine this Java program is running, on that machine, according to that machine, it will compile your bytecode and will make the execution faster for the Java program. Understand? That's what is the advantage of this JIT compiler, just-in-time compiler. Okay. So this is just a theory about it. Okay. And what happens is once that was available, JIT compiler, so then Java software code started running as close as to the speed of C or C++ with a small delay at load time. Okay, so that's why Java became popular also, that okay, it is almost as comparable to C and C++ speed. Okay, the programs that you develop in C and C++, they directly run onto the native platform because they are compiled as per the native platform itself. So those are speedy. So Java also tried to get that part, and thus it became famous. So basically, the Java runtime environment that you saw on this part over here, in this part, right? What does it do? It has got three tasks. It loads the code, that is by class loader. Then it verifies the code by bytecode verifier, and it executes the code by the runtime interpreter. Okay, and along with just-in-time compiler. Okay. Class loader basically loads all the classes necessary for execution of the program. So that's why I just showed you the example of greeting and test greeting, where there are two classes. One is test greeting class, another is greeting class. So when you want to run test greeting, you will have to need to load the greeting class also, right? So this is the responsibility of class loader, to load all the classes which are necessary for execution. Right? Then it also maintains the classes of the local file system in a separate namespaces. That is also the best part. Okay. What will bytecode verifier do? It will make sure that the code adheres to the JVM specification. Code is as per the JVM specification. It does not violate system integrity, so it checks for integrity and security both. Okay, and it causes no operand stack overflows and underflows. So see, in C programs, what would happen is, if you have written a code which is quite running in infinite loop, right? Then it is not catched by the compiler. Whereas many things are caught by the Java compiler itself over here, which will not allow you to go into an infinite loop itself. Okay, so there is very less possibility for operand stack overflows and underflows. So there is very less possibility of your Java program to hang. Understand? You might have observed that C programs can get hanged by going into an infinite loop. That is just one example of how it can get hanged, right? But there is not at all possible in Java, because Java compiler does not itself allow those kind of things. Many things it does not allow it from its side. Understand? Then, so this bytecode verifier also makes sure that there are no stack overflows or underflows. Okay. and the parameter types that we have used, parameters that we are passing to any method are proper, okay, and correct, and there are no illegal data conversions. So for example, if we are converting a string into let's say uh, any class, or let's say if we are converting a number into boolean, okay, so those are illegal data conversions. Those kind of things are very used, are verified by bytecode verifier. Okay, so see, these are some of the Java buzzwords. Now you will say, sir, what are this Java buzzwords? Basically, if before starting the learning of actual language, this theory is very much needed in order to know what is Java, or and how it is important, why it is important. These uh, these 8 buzzwords will uh, will basically focus on the importance of Java language. Okay, so we start with simple. Okay, Java is very simple to understand. Okay, Java is very simple to understand. Okay, because it almost matches the of C and C++. Okay, then it is secure because it provides you your Java class file can run only in a JVM environment, okay, or a Java runtime environment, not outside of it. Okay, then it has got high performance because of the just-in-time compiler added to it. Then it is dynamic, it can dynamically load the classes. Okay, it is multi-threaded. This is the best part of this language, that it is multi-threaded. We will see when we start multi-threading, we will see what is the use of multi-threaded, right? What does it mean by multi-threading? It is platform independent and portable. Portable in the sense you can run a dot class file. Suppose you have compiled a Java file on a Windows machine and generated a class file, right? Now you can run that dot class file on any of the machines, any OS where the JVM has been installed. Okay, so you can run that dot class file on a Linux machine, on another Windows machine, or some any other Solaris machine or some other machine. Okay, so that makes your Java bytecode portable. Okay, that's why it is called as, it is platform independent and portable. And the best part is it is purely object oriented. Everything revolves around objects and classes. Okay, and there is something called as garbage collection. Okay, so you might have remembered that in C programming you used to do malloc and calloc to allocate and clear out the memory, right? So here that part is not available because Java does not allow pointers. There is no pointers available in Java, as those are available in C. Okay, so that is also one thing why Java is secure. It does not allow you to directly access the memory. Okay, so how to handle the memory? What if the memory gets full? It gets hanged. So for that, Java has got a separate module which does garbage collection, which will clear out the memory which is not needed. Okay, so for example, if you have created some objects and now your program is running and those objects are not needed, or not those program objects are not referenced by any reference variables, then it obviously means that those are not needed. It means those should be garbage collected and the memory area should be cleared out. So Java runtime environment automatically does that by invoking Java collector thread or Java collector module. Okay, that is automatically invoked. We cannot control it. Okay, so these are some of the things why Java is very much popular. Okay, we saw platform independent Java, right? So if we write this kind of program, right, where we have, check this out, what is the code over here? The code says, see, this is how your classes are in Java. Okay, you say public class hello world app. So this is the class name. This is class keyword, which defines that you are defining a class, and this is public keyword, which defines that your class is accessible to all. Okay. Then comes inside this. See, so from here Java class starts, and here the Java class ends. In between this class, there can be methods and variables. Okay. So we are seeing a main method over here. We are seeing a main method like which is defined in this way. This is the signature of the method: public static void main, and it takes the string array as argument. So what is the meaning of all this thing? We have seen it. Let's see it again. Public means this main method should be accessible directly, publicly. Why? Because when you run this Java program, how do you run it? You run it like this: Java and class name. What is the class name? Hello world app. See, you do not even use the dot class extension. Here there is a dot class extension, right, with the class name or with the in the class file. But you do not use that dot class extension. You just simply say Java keyword and hello world app. So that will run this hello world app.class file. Okay, but in order to run its main method, that main method should be publicly available. Okay, that should be publicly available. Second thing is that it should be static. Static means since this is a method, methods can be accessed only by creating the object of the class. But we do not want the Java interpreter or JVM to get into the stuff of creating the object. So what do we want? We want it to run directly. So it will be run directly with the help of class name, since it's a static method. And it will not return anything. Even if it returns, JVM does not understand what and why it has returned, right? So it returns void, it returns nothing. And if we pass some parameters over here, like say 1 or ABC, or maybe 3 or 30 or something like this, right? So all these parameters are nothing but command line arguments, because we are running this particular command on a command line. Okay, we are running this particular command on a command line. So these all are command line arguments which are converted into a string array and are given over here to this main method. Okay, understand? Then we simply use the system.out.println. We will call it as SOP. I will call it in for your reference. Make sure when I say SOP, it means system.out.println. Okay, we will call it as SOP. This println SOP is used to say hello world. Okay, so what happens is when we write this hello world app.java file, we give it to compiler for compiling by saying what code. What do we give it? We say over here like this: Java C hello world app dot Java. Here we use the file extension. Here we use the .java file extension. That is compulsory. Once that is done, it will generate what? This command will invoke the compiler and will generate the class file. Which class file? Hello world app dot class. Okay. Now we have to run this. So how do we run this? We can run it on Windows machine, on Solaris machine, or Mac machine, or a Linux machine. Okay, by specifically giving the command as Java and hello world app. That's it. You don't use .class extension over here. For this class file, you don't use. Okay, and you use Java. So this Java command will invoke the interpreter, and this Java C command will invoke the compiler. As simple as that. So first the Java code, source code is compiled, it creates a class file. That class file is interpreted using this Java interpreter. Understand? And the same command can be run on Mac machine or on Solaris machine So it will invoke the interpreter for that machine, or here it will invoke the interpreter for Solaris, or here it will invoke the interpreter for macOS. Okay, so that's why this is Java is platform independent, right? It is object oriented also. It provides various other functionalities or features of object oriented programming, specifically abstraction, right? What is abstraction? Basically, through abstraction you can abstract objects, and you can provide various functions to the objects, okay, where we can write an algorithm to be used in many situations, okay. And what is basically an object? So it's a group of related set of attributes and behaviors into a class. Okay. So for example, you might have remembered that you would have used C program to do some programming like this. For example, if I say make a C program, okay, make a C program to handle student data, okay, handle student data. So what you will do is you will first create a structure, right? You will say struct struct, and then the name of the structure to be, let's say, student, right? And then you will start giving in here the variables int I or int roll number, okay, and then maybe character array of 20 with the name, right? Okay. Like this you would start giving the things, okay, right? So this particular structure we used to make, right? What happens is abstraction is a feature which allows you to abstract real world objects into software objects, okay. So how do you abstract something? So for example, if I say that I have a car, let's say I say that I have a car, right? And I want that real world object car to be made and software car object. So what all properties of this car will you take into the software object car? That whole process is followed by this abstraction part, okay. So what we do is we make objects by grouping a related set of attributes. Set of attributes means which defines that particular object. For example, if a car can have basically the, let's say, type, then it can have something called as the make, then it can have something called as the color, then it can have something called as capacity or sitting capacity, right? Then it can have something called as the manufacturing date, okay, or yes, manufacturing date, right? And the car can belong to a particular manufacturer, so there will be a manufacturer associated with them, it, okay. So these are some of the properties that a car software object of a car can have, right? Then it can have number of wheels, right? It can have what? Number of wheels, right? Obviously it will have 4 wheels only. We know that there is no 6-wheel car, so there is no need of putting this particular part in this car object, right? So let's remove that, right? Then maybe wheel type can be wheel type of wheels. Are those tubeless tires or what, right? Those kind of things, or radial tires or what, right? So these are some of the properties that we can take in a particular car object, understand? And that process is basically called as what? The process of abstracting a real world object into a software object, understand? So that's why we make objects by this process of abstraction, where we provide some functions to that objects, and we provide some attributes. So there is a group set of attributes and behaviors. Now what is this behavior? These functions are nothing but behavior. So for example, if I take a car as a software object, then there it can behave like this. It can have behaviors or methods like start or ignite engine or simply start engine. Okay. After you start, what to do? Change gear. Then you may even accelerate. Then you may even need to, let's say, you may even need to apply brakes. So basically, what happens is there is something called as abstraction that will allow you to create the real world objects into software objects, where you will decide what attributes will define that object and what behavior you will put into that object. So what variables, these attributes are nothing but what variables you will put into a class and what methods you will put into a class. I hope you know what is a variable and a method, right? In C programming you used both. You used variables also and various methods also, or simply functions, right? So basically with the help of abstractions you can create objects, and that group of objects can, again become a large framework or a set of API, right? That can support a complex activity. Okay. And how do you use class? Class are basically the blueprint for object. Class defines how object is made. What is the structure of an object that is defined by class. Okay. So blueprint basically describes in manufacturing what happens. A blueprint describes a device from which many physical devices are constructed. Okay, but in software, a class is a description of an object. It describes that the data that each object can include, the behavior that each object can include. So for example, if you are making a student object, so for example, if you want to make a student object, then what you will make in it? See, this is a class for I'm making for student. So for a student class, what all data will you keep? You will keep data like roll number. Then you will keep data like there is a data type called string, which is equivalent to character array, right? But different than that. Okay, so here directly you can use string. In C this was not available, but in Java this is available. So you say string and name. You can say F name, that is first name, M name, that is middle name, and L name, that is last name. So you define 3 strings, right? Then you may use long variable, long and phone number to define a phone number. And then you may define various methods, like for example, it can be public, void, and run. Student can run. Or let's say is this a student, so student will study. And some body to that. Then there can be some other method called as by public, because it should be available outside the class. Void, and let's say student also needs to take rest, right? So let's say sleep. Okay, and then you end the class. So see, this is the start of the class, this is the end of the class. Okay, these are some variables available inside the class. That is nothing but the data that each object is defined. So the student class is defined with this particular data. Understand? And there is some methods, which is nothing but the behavior of that particular object. So a student object of this particular class can behave in which manner? He can study, he can sleep. These are the methods which can be performed onto that student object. Understand? Yes? Why it is called as data and behavior, right? When I say data of an object or attribute of an object, these things are also termed as data. Some people even call it as attributes, or some even call it as properties. In different books you will get to see different words. Most probably the word that is most prominent and used everywhere is this, either attribute or property. This is mostly used, attributes. So you can even use properties, right? So when I say attribute or property of a class, you understand that I am talking about variables, okay? And when I say behavior, behaviors are basically defined by methods. These are also called as methods. They are also called as what? Methods. Okay. So make sure that a class has data and behavior both. Data means attributes or properties, and the methods. Okay, understand? Some books even call this methods as properties. Don't get confused. Okay, make sure that data a class has attributes and methods. Understand both this part? So what will happen is, when you make an object of this student class, every object of that class will have that particular attribute. Every object of that class will have that data and that common behavior. So the code in the method will be common to all the objects, but the data will be individual to each and every object. Okay. So in Java technology, what is suppose three key object-oriented features. This is why Java is a famous object-oriented programming language. Which are the three object-oriented features or OOPS features? One is encapsulation, another is inheritance, third is polymorphism. This, because of this three, Java is very, very famous, right? It allows you to do encapsulation easily, it allows you to inherit, it allows you to have many forms using polymorphism. So in next lecture we will see these things. See, let me again make it clear to all of you. If you are right now not able to understand all these concepts, don't worry about it. Once we start core programming of Java, you will easily be able to understand each and every concept of theory. Okay, so don't worry about it. Give it some time. Try to understand the keywords, the terminology that I am speaking out. Try to relate with it. So in this beginning of the beginning weeks, what we will do is we'll be going through lots of these kind of terminologies. So when I'm teaching you the concepts, actual concepts, with the help of practical programs, at that time you will be able to recall these terminologies. Okay, so don't worry if right now you are not able to understand the terminology. It will be made clear when you actually do the practical program, when we run the actual practical programs. Okay, fine. So let's call it the end of the day today, and we'll see the other concepts next time, like what is object-oriented Java and what how encapsulation is done, what is inheritance, right? Then what are the features, other polymorphism, what is multi-threading, on all those things we'll see, and then we'll start actual programming. Okay, then we'll start actual Java programming, and we'll go on step by step with each and every concept of Java. Okay, so let me stop the recording. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Okay?